Hello, I'm Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I combine my master's in English with my passion for the horror genre to talk about the books that I read. Today's video is a vlog. It is week 2 of Halloweenathon. And during this vlog, I read So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. I describe Rachel Harrison's work as cozy feminist horror, and this one is her spin on vampires. I will also be reading on my Kindle Autumn Crow by Cameron Chaney. I've had so many people tell me that I had to read this book. I'm really excited. All I know about it is that it is a story or a set of stories that takes place in Autumn Crow, a town where it is Halloween every night. So I'm really excited to read it. And then finally, I will be listening to the audiobook for So Witches We Became by Jill Bagachinsky. And this book has been described as a queer feminist retelling or spin on Stephen King's The Mist. So I will get into more details about each of the books as we go through the vlog. In this vlog, you will also see me do some autumn baking, making some autumn drinks, doing some autumn crafting. So I hope you enjoy your time with me. And after this quick intro, we'll be back with some check ins. See you next time. Hello, it is Monday, September 30th. October Eve. And yes, it is the same day I filmed my intro. So let me just tell you about So Thirsty. I have already made it to page 116. You may can see my bookmark right here. Yeah. Chapter 16. And it is the kind of book that when I pick it up to read it, I really don't want to put it down because Rachel Harrison feels like sitting down with an old familiar friend. So let me tell you what this book is about, other than obviously a vampire book. So the main character's name is Sloane, and she's married, but her husband has been unfaithful a few times. So for her 36th birthday, he gives her a surprise present. And her surprise is that she gets to go away for a wonderful weekend at this resort in the Finger Lakes. But he's not going with her. Instead, he has arranged with her best friend, Naomi, that Naomi is going to go with her. So Sloane is very reserved. She actually says at one point, I fear want in general. I made a promise to myself years ago to always temper my expectations, protect myself from disappointment. So she's kind of settled for things, settled for a husband who she's not even really sure if she loves or not. And obviously, like I said, they have other issues because he has been unfaithful to her at least 3 times that we know of at this point. And so she's just kind of living this life, settling in. Well, her best friend Naomi is totally different. She is dating this rock star. She's also like, I guess like it's kind of like his PR person or something too, because she travels with them. So she's been touring in Europe and handling all of that. And so you have these very different personalities. And I've listened to a couple of interviews with the author, Rachel Harrison, where she talks about how Sloane and Naomi are two parts of her own self. How she's got that reserved, fearful, just kind of settling in personality, which is embodied in the character of Sloane. And then she's got the carefree, reckless, uh, just throw caution to the wind and let the chips fall where they may, even if it gets you into trouble. And that is Naomi. So while they're on the trip, Naomi surprises Sloan with this wild night out. And the night out takes a very interesting turn. And that's where we are now. Something is big has just occurred, and we're kind of going to see what the after effect of all of that is. But one of the things I did want to say that would have struck me as a lot worse if I hadn't listened to the interviews where Rachel Harrison talked about Sloan and Naomi being who, characteristics of who she is within herself, because there is one part where Naomi is getting, angry. She and Sloan are having an argument about this plan that Naomi has made for them to go out and do this wild and dangerous thing. And Naomi says, "You know what? I'm not going to let you do this. I'm not going to let you make me feel bad for embracing the night, for taking you here, for getting you out of your fucking house with your snooze fest husband." Sorry, there was a gnat. Oh, that really messed up the quote. Okay. "You're not going to make me feel bad for embracing the night, for taking you here, for getting you out of your fucking house with your snooze fast husband who can't keep his dick in his pants, who doesn't make you happy, who you won't leave because you got your heart broken once in college and have been fucked up about men and sex and yourself ever since." Now, maybe somebody would see that as tough love from a best friend, but I see that as pretty horrific, and I would not appreciate it if my best friend said that to me. But within the context of knowing that this is Rachel Harrison's kind of grappling with the two sides of her, I get that, because I also have internal dialogue in my head where my own voice says that kind of stuff to me. So that made me kind of say, okay, I get this. I understand. So that's where I am now. Again, like I said, it is very readable. I'm flying through it. So I should be able to finish possibly today or tomorrow and be back with another check in. But until then, I'm going to go. I'm going to get to reading, and I will see you in the next check in. Okay, popping back on to say too with So Thirsty. I did not mention previously that there is commentary on aging, particularly what it means for a woman to age. You have Sloan using all these different creams and, trying to keep up a youthful appearance, and she turned, 36 in this book. Meanwhile, I'll be 50 next year. So I'm thinking, okay, wow, if 36 is old, what am I? But there is some commentary on that too, which is interesting. But at this point, I'm finding more interesting that concept of two personalities, in one person, but being represented. I'm sorry, I got something in my eye, gnats, something in my eye. What is this vlog? But anyway, I'm finding more interesting that concept of the two sides of a personality being depicted in these best friends. So I'm really going to go now and get back to reading, and hopefully there will be no more gnats or any issues with anything in my eye next time. See you then. Hello, so I'm doing a car check-in with Gandalf. Shout out Gandalf. We have just gotten back from the vet where he was just extremely dramatic, over the top. He always does that when he has to go to the vet. It's just very embarrassing. I literally have to pick up this big old baby and carry him across the threshold to get him into the vet because he tries to run away. Everything's fine. He just had a checkup, but I did want to check in the car here and say I did finish So Thirsty last night by Rachel Harrison. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I was hoping it would be a 5-star or at least a 4-star, because typically Rachel Harrison's books are that for me. But I struggled with just the very much in your face kind of commentary on women and aging. I was really looking for more nuance, something more subtle. I also thought the vampire lore was off. Some of the things didn't make sense to me as far as what we typically think of with vampires. Some of it just seemed, I don't know how to describe it, and it hurts me to say this because I love Rachel Harrison so much, but I just felt like things didn't quite hit. The ending was a bit lackluster. I don't know. But it just didn't give me quite what I was looking for and quite what I expect from Rachel Harrison. I'm trying to think of some examples right now because I don't have the book with me of just some of the over-the-top stuff about women and aging. There was a comment made about when an older vampire, and I mean like she was changed when she was older. She's commenting to Sloane, the main character, after she gets changed, and says something about, you're lucky you weren't as, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but she's like, you're lucky you weren't as old as I am, you know, when you were turned, and now nobody wants to be with me. And it was just, I don't know, it just felt like a little bit too much. There was a line too that seemed really forced, where Sloane says something about men she doesn't know making rules for her body. And while I get that's exactly what is happening in the United States as well as in other places, it just felt really forced. And I didn't want to be bashed over the head with something. I wanted something that was alluded to, something that the reader could interpret or infer without being hit over the head with it. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Like I said, I gave it a 3 because I read it in like a day. So it was super quick for me. But it just didn't give me what I was looking for. Okay, so I am also right now reading So Witches We Became. And I'm not going to talk about that one in this check-in because I've gone on long. I'll come back and talk about that one in a little while. I'm listening to that one. And then I'm going to be starting Autumn Crow today by Cameron Chaney, who is a host or a co-host of Halloweenathon. And you can find him at Library Macabre. So I'm going to go now and get this old, crazy dog inside. Hello, it's Thursday, October 3rd. I did not check in yesterday, but I did record some footage of the walk that I took, which you just saw in a clip. And while I was walking, I listened to So Witches We Became by Jill Bagachinsky. I've gotten pretty far into it. I should have checked before I got on, but I would say right now I must be about 60% through it. And I didn't really check in before because I wasn't sure exactly what to say about it. Let me just start with the genre. Again, it is like a horror, but it's YA, which I don't typically read, but because it was compared to The Mist by Stephen King, and it was called a feminist and queer retelling or reimagining of The Mist, that piqued my interest. And I certainly get the feminist vibes and the queer rep, which are both really cool, of course. I do get the comparison to The Mist. Also, it's reminding me of The Raft, the short story by Stephen King, which if you haven't read, you may at least be familiar with the Creepshow adaptation. So we're getting, it's kind of a combination to me of The Mist and The Raft. So we're following 4 high school, well, technically, I guess 3 are in high school, friends, and one of the friends' older brothers is chaperoning them on a spring break trip. And my first issue is that even though these are three high school girls, they're actually in their senior year, so they're almost college age. And then one of them's older brother, who I mentioned is college age. They act very much younger than that. I would say a lot of the interactions they have remind me of middle school age students. So that's a little bit annoying. We're also getting flashbacks to the past. And when the narrator reads in the past, she goes very slowly and almost sounds monotone to some degree. And sometimes when she does the voices for the girls back when they were in elementary and middle school, the voice sounds really babyish. But those are just issues I'm having with the narrator. But I did want to point that out. Now, the present day narration, I'm not having any issue with. So it takes place in Florida. There is talk of hurricanes, so that could be, especially in light of recent events, a trigger warning. I live on the Alabama Gulf Coast, so I completely understand the trauma and the devastation associated with hurricanes. So there is talk of that. There's also, I haven't gotten there yet, but I do know that there is a sexual assault aspect of the book. I'm pretty sure it happens off page, and it is our main character Nell reflecting on something that happened to her in the past, and it is connected with what is presently going on in the story. I'm trying to think of how else to talk about this. Another thing that's kind of bugging me is there's an insta love aspect where the man who is renting the condo or the beach house to the main characters, his daughter, who is college age, she comes to the house to try to, make sure everything's okay, see if there's anything that needs to be, fixed, if the guests have all the things they need. And there is an insta love aspect between her name is Triss, and our main character, Nail. So that's a little bit, irritating to me, that whole insta love. And as the story progresses and things get more and more sinister and terrifying, these two just have this bond that I feel like wouldn't happen this quick, romantically. And just some of that is like hard for me to buy into. And I also didn't mention, and this is very important in the story too, the beach house where they're staying is on a private island. So there's only one access in and out of the private island. So they're isolated. And when they get blocked in, this isn't really spoiler, when they get blocked in by this mist, they don't have another access, a way to get out. So that explains why they are stuck there. The mist keeps their phones from working eventually. So all of that, is explained pretty well. It was a point, when I was in the beginning where I briefly thought about DNFing it, but even with the things that I mentioned that are irritating me a little bit, the story is still compelling enough to me that I want to keep going. So that's a lot to say right now. And I may not even check back in with So Witches We Became until I get finished, because I feel like a lot of the things I'm talking about now, I can't really elaborate on until I get some more things resolved. So I also started reading on my Kindle Cameron Chaney's Autumn Crow. I've read the first three stories so far. The first one, I think it was called Follow Me In, was very beautiful, very touching, about this older person who's reflecting back on their youth with the person that they love, who has since passed on. And just this person just sharing memories. And then there's something that happens at the end that I can't really say that was really sweet. The second one is called Pumpkin. I think it was Pumpkin Light. And again, it had some creepy elements, but it was also very sweet, a very, sweet story again about the power of love and about the magic that can happen on Halloween, because I have mentioned too that every night in Autumn Crow in this town is Halloween. So if you know the folklore surrounding Halloween or Samhain, you know that it is believed that the veil that separates the world of the living and the dead is at its thinnest at that time. So you get a lot of connection there to folklore surrounding that time of year and just how that could affect characters in the story. And the third one I read takes a quite a bit of a sinister turn, and it is called Burnt Brownies. I think Burnt Brownies. Um, and I don't really want to say much about that one, except it does again take place Halloween night, and the twist at the end, I was like, "Oh, crap. That's really dark." So, it's a mixture so far of lighthearted and sweet, then a little bit, sweet and a little bit creepy together, and then the third one just really, horror. So, I'm excited to get into the rest of it. And I am going to go now because I am getting ready to teach the final meeting of one of my Edgar Allan Poe classes. So that's why I am decked out in my red Raven Edgar Allan Poe writing gloves. I have my black and red makeup on and another Poe shirt. So thank you so much for hanging in with this check in, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Hello, it's Friday of week 2 of Halloweenathon. And since I last checked in, I did finish So Witches We Became by Jill Bagachinsky. I was kind of trying to decide if I was going to rate it 3.5 or 4. And when I got to the end, I ended up giving it 4 stars. Now, here are some disclaimers I want to give. First of all, it is definitely written YA. I would say I would even give this book to like a middle schooler on the older end of things, maybe even 13 years old, because I feel like a lot of the topics that were covered in it are very relevant to both middle school and high school students based on the experiences I had, not just in high school, but in middle school with sexual harassment. And that is approached as you get further into the book in several different ways. So, definite trigger warnings here, even though it's what happens, it does happen off page and it is talked about amongst these friends. It is still present in the novel, but I think it's handled well. And there are several things that I liked about the way that it was done. First of all, as I said, it did happen off page, but it's still traumatizing, particularly for those of us who have experienced those kinds of things. So you had the very blatant sexual assault that happened in the past, but you also have other types of harassment that I'm trying to think about how to say this. Other types of harassment, like unsolicited pics that someone might send you, or someone might harass you to send them certain kinds of pictures also. You have older men who leer and make comments about young women and teenagers in this case. So you end up having all of these friends come together and share the experiences that they've had, that they've been afraid to share because of the whole, terminology. And this was said in the novel, the whole boys will be boys, and the way that so many men have gotten away with doing this kind of thing. And the writer herself said that she initially started writing as kind of a response to Hurricane Irma, because there is a big factor to do with hurricanes, as I mentioned before in the story. But as that was happening, certain news stories were breaking, certain assault cases that were happening on college campuses, a certain Supreme Court justice who is serving now, if you remember all of that took place. And then, of course, with the Me Too movement, she started thinking about that kind of damage to all the victims who are afraid to come forward because they see how other victims who come forward are treated. And the book had a lot to say about that, about how, and not just women, because there is a case too where there is a man or a young man who has experienced similar kinds of things too. And the commentary is even made that women aren't the only ones who have been sexually assaulted and sexually harassed. That it crosses gender lines and into, all different types of communities. And I was kind of reminded of Carmen Maria Machado's book in the Dream House, where she talks about the abusive relationship she was in with another woman. So the author, even though the main focus is on these teenage girls who have experienced sexual harassment and sexual assault, there is also commentary about how men can face this too. And it's just, I would have loved to have had this book in middle school and high school, because it has so much to say about sharing your story and about how keeping all of that inside just builds trauma upon trauma. And you may think you can get away from it, but you can't. And so there's a lot of symbolism there with a shadow in the story, and with this mist and this, this kind of thing that is happening, um, has a lot to do with trauma and finding your voice. And based on the title, you can kind of tell. I don't want to give that part of the story away completely, but of course, so witches we became. The idea is you called us witches, or you treated us like witches, you abused us, so witches we became, right? We found our voice, we found our power and strength in numbers. So that's why I ended up giving it 4 stars. And because it's written for a younger age group, a lot of the subtleties that would have been probably left as they were for an adult to pick up, I felt like some of the explanation and commentary is necessary if we're thinking about younger readers. And I just really needed that book when I was younger. Okay, so I am going to switch gears really quickly now and say I'm about halfway through um, Autumn Crow. I don't know why it took me a second to think of it. And I'm still enjoying it. The stories are still varied. One of the ones I just read was pretty disgusting and gross at one part with some explanations. So it's such a wide variety of types of stories. But I'm enjoying it. And I'm going to go now, and I will check back in when I have more to say about Autumn Crow. See you in the next one. Hello, back again. Today is still Friday, and I am finished reading Autumn Crow by Cameron Chaney. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It's a fun book to read for Halloween season. I did like the first stories better than the second half of stories. And that will about do it for this vlog. So thank you so much for joining. I would definitely appreciate it if you would hit that like button and subscribe, and look for Halloweenathon week 3 vlog coming next week. Let me know what you're reading. How is your October going so far? What's been your favorite book of the spooky season? Let me know, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you again for watching. Bye.